The peaceful trade relationship between the United States and Canada, long considered one of the world's most stable, shattered this week in dramatic fashion. For decades, these two neighbors have relied on each other for everything from raw materials to finished goods, building a partnership that fueled prosperity on both sides of the border. But now, that trust has been broken. On September 17, 2025, Canada announced a sweeping $22 billion in retaliatory tariffs on a wide range of American goods, a direct and forceful response to aggressive U.S. trade measures imposed earlier this year. The announcement sent shockwaves through boardrooms and government offices across North America. This move shocked the global economy, signaling a serious conflict between two of the world's closest allies. Investors and analysts scrambled to assess the fallout, as markets reacted with volatility and uncertainty. The Canadian tariffs were not random. They were strategically targeted at politically sensitive U.S. regions, including key manufacturing states and agricultural heartlands, maximizing their economic and political impact. Prime Minister Mark Carney's government made it clear, Canada will not stand by while its interests are threatened. In a nationally televised address, Carney emphasized the need to defend Canadian workers and industries, vowing to stand firm against what he called unjust and punitive American actions. President Trump condemned the tariffs in strong terms, calling them a betrayal of trust, and vowing not to back down. He promised swift countermeasures, escalating the standoff and fueling fears of a prolonged trade war. The rhetoric on both sides has escalated rapidly, making a quick resolution unlikely. Businesses and consumers now find themselves caught in the crossfire, facing rising costs and growing uncertainty about the future. These are not minor adjustments. This is a broad-based economic confrontation involving tens of billions in trade, affecting everything from automobiles and steel to groceries and household goods. Canada's retaliation signals a new phase in global trade, where even major economies are willing to absorb significant pain to push back against what they see as unfair or damaging policies. The world is watching closely as tensions rise. The cycle of escalation is creating deep uncertainty, damaging business confidence, and threatening workers and industries on both sides of the border. As the standoff continues, the stakes for both nations and the global economy have never been higher. To truly understand the roots of this economic conflict, we first need to understand what tariffs are and why they matter so much in global trade. A tariff is essentially a tax that a government places on goods imported from other countries. This tax makes foreign products more expensive for domestic consumers, often with the goal of encouraging people to buy locally made goods instead. For example, if a Canadian chair costs $500 and the US imposes a 10% tariff, that chair now costs $550 in American stores. That extra $50 is the tariff, and it goes straight to the government. Governments use tariffs for several reasons: to protect local industries from foreign competition, to generate revenue for the state, and sometimes as a bargaining chip in international negotiations. In fact, President Trump's tariffs have generated over $165 billion for the U.S. Treasury this year alone, providing a significant source of income for the government. In the ongoing U.S.-Canada dispute, tariffs are being wielded as powerful economic weapons. Each side is trying to inflict enough financial pain to force the other to make concessions at the negotiating table. But tariffs are a double-edged sword. While they can offer protection, they also come with significant risks and unintended consequences. While tariffs can help shield certain industries from foreign competition, they also raise costs for businesses that rely on imported materials, making it harder for them to stay competitive. Retaliation, like Canada's response, can quickly escalate into a full-blown trade war. This disrupts supply chains, causes delays at borders, and leads to higher prices for everyday goods. Ironically, the very workers tariffs are meant to protect can end up suffering the most, as factories close or lay off employees due to rising costs and lost business. In the end, tariffs often create more problems than they solve, leading to confusion, frustration, and economic uncertainty for businesses and consumers alike. The current dispute is a classic example of how quickly trade tensions can spiral out of control, with each new tariff fueling further retaliation and uncertainty. The stakes are high, not just for the US and Canada, but for the entire global trading system, as decisions made here can ripple across economies worldwide. This dispute began with a major US policy shift in early 2025. The Trump administration imposed a sweeping 10% tariff on nearly all imports. breaking with decades of free trade policy. The stated goal: protect American manufacturing, bring jobs back, and address the trade deficit. Additional tariffs targeted Canadian steel, lumber, and aluminum, some as high as 35%. Washington justified these as vital for national security and economic strength. President Trump framed the tariffs as fulfilling his promise to put American workers first. The administration sees the economic pain as a necessary tactic to force better trade deals. This aggressive approach isn't limited to Canada. Similar tactics have been used against China, India, and Europe. The US believes its massive consumer market gives it leverage to demand change. By restricting access, the administration hopes to force trading partners to the table. It's a high-risk, high-reward strategy that's now drawn Canada into direct confrontation. The result, a full-blown trade war with America's closest neighbor. Canada didn't just absorb the blow, it hit back with a calculated, carefully orchestrated response designed to send a clear message both at home and abroad. Rather than reacting impulsively, Canadian leaders weighed their options and chose a path that balanced strength with strategy. The $22 billion in tariffs didn't just target random goods, they focused on iconic American products like bourbon, oranges, and cheese. These are not just any exports, they come from states represented by some of the most influential politicians in Washington, making the impact deeply personal and political. The goal was clear: create political pressure in Washington by hitting key constituencies where it hurts most, and force lawmakers to pay attention to the consequences of their trade policies. Prime Minister Carney defended the move as not just a matter of economics, but as a necessary step to protect Canadian sovereignty and long-term prosperity. He emphasized that Canada would not be intimidated or forced into an unfair deal. Canada's message was resolute: it won't be bullied, but it still prefers negotiation and free trade. The government made it clear that the door remains open for dialogue, but not at the expense of Canadian interests. The tariffs were also carefully chosen to target products where Canadians have strong alternatives, minimizing harm at home while maximizing pain for US exporters. This approach helped shield Canadian consumers and businesses from the worst effects. For example, by taxing American ketchup, Canada hopes consumers will switch to domestic brands, supporting local producers and keeping money in the Canadian economy. The response has united Canadian political parties, bringing together leaders from across the spectrum in a rare show of solidarity against what they see as unfair US aggression. Carney is also working closely with other countries like Mexico to build a united front against US tariffs. By forging alliances, Canada is amplifying its voice on the world stage. The aim is to amplify pressure on Washington and show that protectionism will be met with coordinated global resistance. Canada is not standing alone in this fight. Canada's tariffs are more than just an economic tool. They're a powerful political statement about national resolve and the willingness to defend core values. The country is standing its ground in an unprecedented trade dispute, showing determination and unity in the face of external pressure. The world is watching closely to see who blinks first, as the outcome of this standoff could reshape the future of international trade relations for years to come. This trade war is hitting ordinary people hard. Prices for everyday goods, food, clothing, electronics are rising as tariffs drive up costs. Canadian families face higher grocery bills. Americans see imported items become pricier. Small businesses struggle to absorb costs or risk losing customers. Farmers and manufacturers reliant on cross-border trade are losing key markets. Complex supply chains mean tariffs increase costs at every stage, threatening jobs and competitiveness. The fallout is real. Families, workers, and businesses are all feeling the squeeze. Another blow came with the end of the US de minimis rule, which once let small packages under $800 enter duty-free. Now, every package faces import duties and paperwork, making online shopping more expensive and unpredictable. Small businesses on both sides of the border are hit hardest, facing higher costs and logistical headaches. Shipping companies warn of backlogs and delays as every parcel is processed for customs. The result? Chaos in e-commerce, higher prices, and a tougher environment for small retailers and consumers alike. Economists warn the trade war could cause lasting damage. While tariffs may help some industries, the overall effect is negative higher prices, less investment, and job losses. The Congressional Budget Office says tariffs shrink the economy by raising costs and discouraging spending. Exporters face lost sales abroad, and industries like agriculture and logistics are at risk. The uncertainty is toxic. Businesses delay hiring and investment, fearing what's next. If the dispute drags on, companies may move production out of North America, undermining decades of integration. The Federal Reserve is already cutting rates to counteract the slowdown. The longer this lasts, the greater the risk of recession. With billions in tariffs and rising tensions, everyone's asking, how does this end? The best hope is a return to negotiations, with both sides seeking compromise to end the pain. Legal challenges in the U.S. Supreme Court could also force a change in tariff policy, but if both sides dig in, the trade war could escalate, tipping both economies into recession and forcing businesses to abandon cross-border supply chains. The outcome will shape not just U.S.-Canada relations, but the future of global trade. Will we see renewed cooperation or a slide into protectionism? For now, businesses and consumers can only wait and hope for stability to return.